Director of Community Development, Laura Harrier, Zoning Officer, and Anthony Talarita, Township Engineer with Pidcock Company, and Jennifer Alderfer, Township Solicitor with Zader Law. And also we have Leo DeVito here, who's the alternate Township Solicitor. Greg, could you go over the meeting rules?
Yes. For an orderly meeting wherein all attendees may be fully able to participate, we ask that you adhere to the following rules. Please mute your microphones or telephone to avoid background noise that may cause interference in the meeting and make it difficult for others to hear. Staff may mute microphones of the remote attendees if needed. Public questions and comments will be taken at periodic intervals throughout the agenda. We will start with no time limits, but the Planning Commission Chairman may impose a short time limitation if there are many questions or if the meeting is running short on time. For in-person attendees, please raise your hand to be recognized and then move to the podium when directed and state your name, address, and comment or question. Please turn the podium microphone on before speaking and off when done. For remote attendees, the chat box feature will be active throughout the meeting. If you have a comment or question, please type your full name and address in the chat box, which is probably a speech balloon icon somewhere on the screen. When you are recognized and so directed, please unmute your microphone and state your comment or question. Mute your microphone when done. For those who are accessing the meeting by phone only, staff will periodically ask for caller comments and unmute any callers. Callers must identify their name and address prior to making a comment. Your cooperation and adherence to these rules will ensure an orderly and respectful meeting. Thank you.
Right, we're on agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. The first minutes are the December 13th, 2022 comp plan meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments or edits or revisions?
Dave, were there any changes to the minutes of the Board of Commissioners last night or not? Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Mr. Adams, can we do a roll call?
Trevor Dombach,
Abstain.
Tim Dugan,
Aye.
Andrew Flagg,
Abstain.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly,
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
4 out of 6 are affirmative, 2 abstentions. That is sufficient to pass.
All right, December 15th, 2022 meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments or edits?
Chairman, at the bottom of page 21, during the election of officers, it was stated that for the office of secretary, that Mr. Luth nominated Mr. Timothy Dugan, but then at the bottom it said Mr. Wilson was elected by a vote of 7-0, so that should be corrected to Mr. Dugan. That's the only change I had.
Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Trevor Dombach,
Aye.
Tim Dugan,
Aye.
Andrew Flagg,
Aye.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly,
Aye.
and David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, we're on agenda item number 4, comprehensive plan review. Manhart or Chris Stroller, would you like to discuss that?
We've been collecting comments from the public during the 45-day public comment period. We are organizing the comments into subject category, and once we finish that, we'll provide an overview of the types of comments that we've been receiving and determine what we do if there's anything that is in conflict with the plan as presented. Tonight, we had a public open house from 5 to 7, and we had a good conversation with several members of the community, and just have been receiving feedback so far. We're looking at the public comment period closing in February, and barring that there's not any major changes, we would come back and request that the Board of Commissioners adopt the comprehensive plan.
All right. Thank you for the update. All right, agenda item number 5, subdivision review. First project is Montard Group LLC self-storage facility. Mr. Adams, would you like to do the staff presentation?
Yes. This is an application to further develop the property located at 3350 and 3354 Walbert Avenue. The plan proposes to consolidate the two parcels, raise the existing residential and agricultural structures, and construct a 3-story, 112,800 square foot self-storage facility, a 16-space parking lot, and associated stormwater management facilities on the 2.007 acre parcel. The property is served by public water and sewer and is zoned general commercial 1, special height limitation GC1. 3354 Walbert Avenue Association LP is the owner. TAC Allentown LLC is the applicant. Department's recommendation is that the Planning Commission take the plan under advisement to afford the applicant time necessary to address the reviewing agency's comments. Our recommendation is contingent upon the applicant granting Township a waiver from the time frame in which to act upon the plan, which was granted. However, should the Planning Commission find the plan sufficient to advance them to the Board of Commissioners, we would recommend that the applicant comply with the following conditions. 1, that the applicant shall execute subdivision improvement, security, maintenance, and indemnification agreements acceptable to the Township and its solicitor, that sufficient security in a form acceptable to the Township be posted, that such security be available for draws presentation no further than 60 miles from the Township's office, and evidence of insurance coverage in an amount satisfactory to the Township and its sole discretion shall be provided prior to the plan being recorded. 2, that the applicant address to the satisfaction of the Township engineer the comments of Mr. Anthony Talarita as contained in his review dated November 11, 2022. 3, that the applicant address to the satisfaction of the Township water and sewer engineer the comments of Mr. Jason Newhart as contained in his review dated August 12, 2022. 4, that the applicant address to the satisfaction of Township geotechnical consultant the comments of Mr. Chris Taylor as contained in his review dated November 3, 2022. 5, that the applicant address to the satisfaction of the Community Development Department the comments of Mr. Greg Adams as contained in his review dated January 13, 2023. 6, that the applicant address to the satisfaction of the Public Works Department the comments of Mr. Herb Bender as contained in his review dated October 31, 2022. 7, that the applicant obtains a review indicating consistency with the Act 167 requirements of the LVPC. 8, that the applicant obtains a letter from PADEP or the Lehigh County Conservation District approving the NPDES permit application pursuant to Section 31239E of SALDO. 9, that the applicant obtains a letter from PADEP approving the sewage facilities module or an exemption thereto. 10, that the applicant obtains an HOP or permits from PennDOT for road and utility work within the right-of-way of Walbert Avenue. 11, that the applicant complies with the September 13, 2022 recommendation of the Parks and Rec Board. 12, that the applicant complies with the July 29, 2022 recommendation of Landscape and Shade Tree Commission. 13, that the applicant addresses all issues and obtains all approvals deemed necessary by the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners insofar as matters pertaining to the township's water and sewer service are concerned. 14, if deemed to be necessary, the applicant shall dedicate to the township additional right-of-way along the frontage of Walbert Avenue at a width acceptable to the township. The dedication shall occur prior to the plan being recorded. The dedication shall be by deed of dedication in form acceptable to the township solicitor, and an opinion of record title shall be prepared by the applicant's counsel indicating that the dedication is free and clear of liens and encumbrances that would affect the township's use of said property. The applicant shall furnish to the township solicitor a description of the dedication that has been approved by the township engineer and a copy of the current deed for the property showing current ownership and recording information. 15, that the applicant will be responsible for making necessary arrangements with the municipality and the public service company involved for streetlights as approved by the Board of Commissioners and shall further be responsible for providing utility easements for the lighting standards and fixtures in accordance with Section 31241A1A of SALDO. 16, that the applicant coordinates with the Township Engineer's Office to have additional addresses assigned to the record of plan. 17, that the applicant shall execute a declaration of covenants and easements for the maintenance of stormwater management facilities prepared by the Township Solicitor for the maintenance of the on-site stormwater management facilities. 18, that the plan be amended to include a note referencing the state highway law pursuant to Section 508.6 of the PA-MPC and Section 312.12A9 of SALDO. 19, that the applicant reconciles all open invoices for township engineering and legal expenses prior to the plan being recorded. 20, that the plans are to be revised and deemed to be clean prior to them being presented to the Board of Commissioners. And finally, 21, should the township determine that the plan has been sufficiently modified from the approved plan to satisfy the requirements in other conditions or outside agency approvals, including but not limited to increased building or impervious surface footprint, alterations that cause noncompliance with township regulations, or major changes to design layout, the applicant shall resubmit the revised plan to the Township Planning Commission for further review and recommendation, and then to the Board of Commissioners for further review and possible approval. The Planning Commission's soft deadline to act on the plan was December 19th. The BOC hard deadline was January 18th, but now that's been pushed off till July. So they're fine.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. Would the applicant like to start their presentation? Please state your name as well.
Good evening. My name is Bob Tucker from Kaplan Stewart. I'm here filling in for Greg Edelman, attorneys for the applicant. Mr. Adams did a good job summarizing the application and the status. An extension was granted to the board to render a decision. I believe it was for 6 months. As you know, this application has been before the Planning Commission back in November and then August. Revisions were made to the plan, and we're here this evening seeking your recommendation to move forward to the board. The 21 conditions that were just read aloud by Mr. Adams are acceptable to the applicant, so we're ready to move forward if you would like to give us your recommendation conditioned on those 21 conditions. With me this evening is Mary Bockert, from the project engineer from Bowler, and Tyler Kraus, traffic engineer from McMahon. I'm going to turn it over to Mary to just go through the latest plan and answer any questions you have. And then if you have traffic questions or concerns, Tyler's here to answer those for you. Thanks.
Evening, everyone. The plan that we're looking at is actually the same plan that we saw last time, so there's no changes to the plan. The last time we were before you, you were looking for PennDOT comments. So we do have our cycle 1 review letter, as well as the township engineer's comments on that letter. And that's the new information. Aside from that, we're working through outside agency approvals. So we have Act 167 consistency from LVPC, as well as we have admin completeness and are waiting on technical comments for NPDS. Sewer planning is in progress, and LVPC has recently signed that, so that'll be back for approval and then to DEP shortly. That's our updated status. Any questions?
Yes. A key item we discussed was the facade and renderings or photos of the proposed facility or existing facilities. At our last meeting, it was indicated that the applicant would provide some photos and present them. Do you have any photos or renderings?
I have the renderings we bought last time. Greg, I sent them to you, but I also have them on boards. I don't know which is, do we have them?
Boards would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, boards are fine. Yeah, that was my mistake. I thought I had put them in the packet. Apparently, they did not make it there.
Here are renderings. of the building. So you can see would be the view looking from Walbert westward. And then basically the opposite angle from the frontage looking towards the light at Cedar Crest. Questions on the renderings?
No, I don't. I saw in the agenda packet and we discussed the Lanta bus stop. Are you proposing a concrete pad?
Yes, we're providing a concrete pad, and I think their most recent comment was looking to expand that. We have no objection to that.
Then can you expand upon the traffic? And we understand there's a scoping meeting with PennDOT, and it's really under PennDOT's purview, and PennDOT's allowing for full access in and out. Can you expand upon that a little?
Sure, if you don't mind, I'll actually call Tyler up. He's with McMahon Associates, the traffic engineer.
Good evening, Tyler Kraus with McMahon Associates. So we did submit a TIS scoping application meeting to PennDOT earlier this year. They came back with no specific comments related to the scope. They actually didn't require a traffic impact study due to the limited amount of trips that the site is going to generate. They also did not make any notion on providing any kind of limits to the access. They were okay with full movement. Just to kind of give a comparison, the proposed site in the weekday afternoon peak hour is going to generate 8 trips entering, 9 trips exiting. So kind of if you split that 50-50, it amounts of 4 trips entering, turning left into the site from Walbert into the site, and then 5 trips exiting, turning left onto Walbert Avenue. So it's a very insignificant amount of trips for those specific movements, which amounts to 1 car every 10 to 15 minutes during the peak hour. So that's kind of where, and based on that, and then some of the other review that PennDOT did, they didn't require any kind of restrictions.
Thank you. Yeah, I know us as a township, we initially stated we would like write in only and write out. We have some concern about the queuing, but now that the scoping's been done with PennDOT, we understand also it's a state road. It's really under PennDOT's purview, so we'll leave it to what PennDOT has. At least I will, to what PennDOT has stated.
Mind if I ask a question? I just have curiosity, as a community and somebody coming into the community, obviously you want to be a good member within the community. If the community feels that write in, write out would be beneficial to the community, regardless of what PennDOT is allowing you, would you take that into consideration?
So we did take it into consideration. We actually did attend the public safety committee, the township's public safety committee meeting last Monday, and they actually rescinded their requirement for write-in, write-out access and are allowing the full movement as well. So I guess to that point, I feel like we have kind of satisfied the township and the town's requirements in that regards.
Okay, thanks.
And then in terms of stormwater, did you indicate you did get the Act 167 approval from?
Yes, so
Okay,
we have Act
okay.
176 consistency,
67?
and we, yes. And we have admin complete on NPDS, so we are awaiting technical comments early to mid-March.
Anyone have any?
So in PennDOT's response letter, I mean, they gave a fair amount of review comments. What's your timeline? I know it's hard to.
For
anticipate.
resubmission or permit in hand?
Yeah,
what
for
are
when
you-
they would have permit in hand, like once they would confirm the HOP as designed.
Obviously, it's up to them on how many cycles we go through. We're planning on resubmitting for our cycle 2 review in the next 2 weeks, 30-day turnaround for review, comment, or permit, and then whether there'd be another cycle or not.
I think, yeah, in general, with all the factors that Mr. Adams presented, and I appreciate the fact of you all noting that they're all acceptable. I feel like there's still like a lot of open pieces left here that we're just waiting just to kind of get those final pieces to come through and get confirmed.
We're actually in a pretty good place with outside agency approvals. So it's very early to have Act 167 consistency. That's good. Our sewer is moving along. HOP looks like a long letter, but most of it is paperwork, BPID, so that they can properly bill the applicant. That takes up half a page. Plan cleanup type items, scale, labeling, that kind of thing. There's really no substantive comments, in my opinion, and Tyler could probably weigh on that better than I, but it's not something that I feel like we couldn't take that as a contingency on the approval.
Thank you.
I have a question about, about construction. It seems like a constrained site is, my concern is when you're doing your construction that there's going to be cars parked along Walford Avenue, either by contractors or is this like a modular build or how is this?
Our development doing self-storage for approximately 26 years. Typically speaking, obviously, if we're not allowed to park on Walford, we'll come up with coming to an agreement with the parking development next to us, Target store, and see if we could park there. But typically speaking, we only have maybe about 20 people on the job site as once. Once you build the structure, the concrete, the inside of it is just, there's no other trades within it. It's the heavy lifting is on the outside, and then once you get inside, there's really not that much. So it's not a lot of subs within the building. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just concerned about, especially if the Ridge Farm going on at the same time, it could be, and it's already a little congested corridor right there, so.
This is more property than half of my construction jobs right now. So we're used to dealing with it. And my contractor who's proposed to do this is doing 5 for me right now on 0 lot lines in New York City. So they are used to dealing with constrained sites. So.
Yeah, New York City is a whole different animal building.
Yes, but yes.
We're not there yet, and hopefully not my lifetime. Thank you.
I believe there's a comment, and Mr. Adams, correct me if I'm wrong, about possibly providing a pull-off lane for the Lantha bus at the bus stop, just carving out a little pull-off area. Was there a comment?
I think the comment related to, I think an earlier version of the plan showed a smaller pad for the bus stop, and they requested the possibility of doing a bigger pad with hopes of locating a shelter there. Because I believe that's one of their bigger use stops.
I believe there was a question about would PennDOT require additional width or anything along those lines, and then Lanta weighed in again and said what they would be looking for would be an increased size of the pad that we already provided. Yep.
Thank you.
Quick follow, with or without shelter?
At this point, without shelter, they have not requested the shelter.
Okay.
Yeah, Lanta has a whole process about, they want to start with the pad, and then they, as funding allows, they put the shelters in. So.
Yeah, the pad and the sidewalks are kind of the first step to get on the list to get the shelter. So we're working closely with Lanta.
And a shelter might be a great advertising opportunity for you to coordinate and say, hey, we're here. So just put that out there.
Is there anyone in the audience that has any comments or questions? Is there anyone online?
Diane, are you trying to speak, or could you just chime in real quick so we can see that you're that it's working.
So I think Diane's having trouble with her microphone. Her comment is that she wasn't able to see the rendering and is asking if consideration has been made to build this complement RF buildings proposed. Ridge Farm.
Buildings, so.
I've never seen, or we've never seen any renderings of across the street, and nor was I ever asked to even consider complimenting them. It was never brought up before.
So we can certainly share those with you. And if there's anything you can do,
Okay.
pending where it comes from here, we can coordinate to get you that information. And whether, depending on where it is in the process, if it goes to the BOC with those changes, you'll have that information.
Great. If there aren't any other comments, we want to make a motion, either take this under advisement or anything else?
There are 4 waivers, I believe.
Waivers.
They're listed in our November 11th letter.
Yes.
Page 39. Sorry, 40.
51?
They're on 50,
Top right
they're on
in there.
51. You can be 51. I think they're on twice, but 51 is an acceptable page.
All right, I guess we'll go through these one by one. I guess, do you want to read through the first, or should I read through the first one?
I can read through them if you like.
Who gets paid to read?
All right, the first one, and I am on page 40. This is waiver of Saldo Section 312-12B19, the requirement that the plans show location, size, and owners of existing buildings, sewer mains, water mains, culverts, storm sewers, petroleum product lines, gas lines, transmission lines, including extent of right-of-way, fire hydrants, underground tanks, wells, septic systems within 100 feet of the tract, and other significant man-made features. Pidcock says they have no engineering objection to this request.
So these are just showing items on the plans beyond the property. Engineer Talarito doesn't have any objections. I don't have any objections. This is a pretty standard, somewhat standard waiver. Have any thoughts or want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Greg, would you like to do roll call?
Trevor Dombach,
Abstain?
Tim Dugan,
Aye.
Andrew Flagg,
Aye.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly,
Diane, are you able to? Oh, there it is. Aye.
aye. David Wilson,
Aye.
motion passes 5-0 with one abstention. Moving on. Saldo Section 312-12B20. This is a waiver from the requirement for the plan to show existing buildings and structures within 100 feet of the site. The Pidcock Company has no engineering objection to this request.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Trevor Dombach,
Abstain.
Tim Dugan,
Aye.
Andrew Flagg,
Aye.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly, and I. And David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with one abstention. The third waiver request. This is a waiver from Saldo Section 312-12B21, which requires the plan show locations and widths of all sidewalks, trails, driveways, streets, easements, and rights-of-way within 400 feet of the tract. The Pidcock Company has no engineering objection to this request.
I have a question for our engineer. So all the data that we have from Ridge Farm and everything else that's gone on, we're pretty much covered.
Yes, yes. And then the way we look at this is we always look at off-site if they're affecting an off-site area. We would always need information. This is really a self-contained on their property, and we do have the benefit of aerial photography and development around the area. That's why these have had no objections.
The reason why I'm asking is because in the past that we've called in deferrals of sidewalks and sometimes they're not engineered fully where we would be pulling in. I'm going to be scrutinizing this waiver a little bit more in the future.
No, that's correct. And we have the benefit of the Township GIS also, but yes.
Okay. With that, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Trevor Dombach,
Abstain.
Tim Dugan,
Aye.
Andrew Flagg,
Aye.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly. Third one. David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with one abstention. The fourth waiver request is a waiver of Section 312-12B36, which is the requirement to provide identification/location of existing street trees 6 inches in caliper or greater. We defer to the Township Shade Tree Commission to determine the acceptability of this request. I believe Shade Tree said
Yes, so that meeting is on Monday, right?
Monday.
Okay, and I'm one of two members, so although I've been the only one there, I do would like to give the opportunity the other Shade Tree Commission member to participate.
Mhm.
You make this contingent.
Certainly could.
I'd be willing to do that.
Okay.
That's okay with our.
Yes, I have no problem with that.
With that, I'll make pending the shade tree.
I'll second that.
Trevor Dombach,
Abstain.
Tim Dugan,
Aye.
Andrew Flagg,
Aye.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
Could you repeat the motion?
I believe the motion was to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to waive the conditions of Section 312-12B36, requiring the identification and location of existing street trees 6 inches in caliber or greater, conditioned upon the recommendation of the Landscape and Shade Tree Commission
On Monday.
on Monday.
An aye.
An aye. And finally, David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with one abstention.
Those are all the waiver requests. I think we're, I think that, the plans are very far along. They're very close. I think there seems to be some final items that we would still like more clarification on. So I'll make a motion to take it under advisement. Oh, I apologize. I don't want to make a motion. if anyone wants to make a motion.
Diane seconded.
Nope.
If you didn't want to make the motion, I'll make the motion on your behalf, whatever you said. Take it under advisement. Okay.
She seconded that one too.
Okay. Here we go for the vote. Trevor Dombach,
Abstain?
Tim Dugan,
Aye.
Andrew Flagg,
Aye.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly. Aye. David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with one abstention.
Thank you for your time. All right, we're on agenda item 5B, 4741 Chapman's Road Flex Warehouse, 2022. Conditional use review. Mr. Adams, would you like to do the staff presentation?
Yes. This is an application for conditional use approval for warehouse and distribution use to be located at 4741 Chapman's Road. A proposed warehousing and distribution use that currently does not comply with the originally approved traffic impact assessment report and has submitted a revised traffic impact assessment report for review and approval. The subject property is zoned IC1 Industrial Commercial 1 Special Height Limitation. Riverbend South Whitehall Properties 1 LLC is the owner and applicant. The department recommends that we will devise a list of conditions of approval, which we distributed, yes, after this.
Good evening, folks. Greg Davis with the Saul Ewing Law Firm. As Mr. Adams said, the property is located at 4741 Chapman's Road. There's a roughly 100,000 square foot warehouse building on it today. Pardon me. The warehouse project received conditional use and land development approval in 2019. Currently, there's one tenant occupying about a third of the building, and Walgreens has expressed an interest in occupying the other 2/3 of the building. The issue is that the traffic looks a little different with Walgreens than it did when we went through the process, the conditional use process in 2019. So we're here to talk to you about that. In essence, there will be more cars and fewer trucks. But since there's a difference, we needed to talk to you all about it and get that modification to the conditional use taken care of. What I'd like to do, unless the Planning Commission has other ideas, I'd like to have Kevin Horvath from Keystone come up and walk you through the site plan and some of the changes that are proposed to it. And then his colleague, Scott Pastersky, also with Keystone, is our traffic engineer, and he can talk to you about the numbers and how they've changed. Does that work? Okay, good. Great.
Good evening. Kevin Horvath with Keystone Consulting Engineers. I was the site design engineer for the project when it was approved back in 2019, 2020. What you see in front of you or on the screen is the 102,000 square foot warehouse. It has up to 24 dock doors on the north side, which would be on the left side of the plan, employee parking to the right, and there's a remote lot furthest to the north side of the site that was originally striped for trailer and truck parking. As Attorney Davis indicated, the proposed user, Walgreens, is going to be a more passenger vehicle intensive use, less truck traffic than what was initially anticipated. So what we're proposing to do is stripe the lower portion of that remote truck lot as parking for passenger vehicles. I believe there's 78 spaces there. And then additionally, adjacent to the rear of the building, we're going to restripe a handful of loading dock spaces to create an additional 24 passenger car parking spaces. Traffic circulation on the site would be as previously approved. Trucks would be restricted to entering from Chapman's Road at the north driveway. That's the one adjacent to the remote parking area. And that would, in addition, however, I imagine with the addition of the passenger vehicle parking, that would be utilized for passenger vehicle entering, exiting as well. The south exit or the south driveway would be restricted to passenger vehicles only. In all cases, all truck traffic is restricted from turning right out of either driveway. It's instead is going to be directed to the north on Chapman's Road to Route 309. There really aren't any changes from the approved plan. As stated, this was built per plan. It exists today, partially occupied and functional, and we're here tonight to seek approval for the proposed tenant Walgreens with a slightly different traffic generation than what was previously approved. Any questions? I'm happy to take them at this time.
My questions have to deal with pedestrian circulation from the remote parking lot to the building. How wide is that pedestrian walkway? I'm assuming it's going to be paint striped.
Right.
And how do you intend to manage where people park? Are there reserved spots for the one tenant versus the other? Or is it first come, first serve? Because based on shift changes, it could get a little chaotic. People trying to park closer to the building, especially in weather like today. So if you could walk me through that, that would be great. Or us.
I'll break that down. I'll start with the pedestrian circulation issue. As you indicated, there is going to be a striped pedestrian walkway that would allow for a passageway from the remote lot to the rear of the building, intended at 5 feet wide. With respect to parking, I would defer, I suppose, to Scott Bosco of Indus. He's the owner-operator of the building.
Eric Friedman is online.
He can also address some of the issues directly related to the tenant usage.
Eric, is your microphone unmuted?
I believe so. Can I be heard at the room?
Loud and clear.
Oh no. I'll try and move the microphone. With respect to the pedestrian parking, we also have concern for the safety of our team members in that remote lot, in particular, coming to the front of the building. In addition to what our landlord is providing, which is everything on the current site plan, the Walgreens tenant improvement scope is also proposing to add a 6-foot high chain link fence to the interior side of that striped walkway. As much as we train people to walk on the line, the shortest path is often very tempting. So we are intending to physically control the pedestrian flow from that rearmost lot to get to the front of the building. So I wanted to offer that clarification. I do not believe that this location will have restricted parking by way of saying Walgreens only or parking only for our other tenant. But our entryway for our team members is not even that corner entry that you'll see on the plan where there's a chamfered or a cut corner in the bottom right. That's our visitor entry, but our employee entry is actually even further around on that bottom elevation to the left of the visitor entry. And so really that the sort of the gravitational pull of people wanting to park near their entry point will keep them pretty far away from our other tenants' parking area.
And Eric, if you could just give your name and address for the record.
Absolutely. It's in the chat also. Eric Friedman with Walgreens. Address is 200 Wilmot Road in Deerfield, Illinois.
So if I understood this correctly, where it's striped, there's going to be a fence to kind of make it like a channeled pedestrian walkway. So where the water tower or water storage standpipe is shown on the plan, that access is going to be reduced to 19 feet from 24.
As shown on the plan, it's 24 feet with a 5-foot wide walkway.
Is that two-way traffic there or is that one way?
I believe it was intended initially as a two-way traffic. There's no signage prohibiting two-way traffic.
It seems like it could be a little bit of a challenge, especially at night. But anyway, also, I actually drove through the property last night. At night, that area between the overflow parking and your door docks, it seems a little, are you proposing any kind of pedestrian lighting enhancements to kind of, especially if it's going to be channeled or something, or you haven't thought that through? Or
I have not proposed anything. If Walgreens has something in mind, I haven't heard of it, but
it just seemed a little dark in that little area there, but I'll defer to our lighting consultant. Those are all the questions I had at this moment.
Yeah, to piggyback on Mr. Height's comments, I would think pedestrian lighting is very important.
the lighting was designed and improved to, illuminate the entire area, pretty uniformly. Where there are some less lighted areas, that may be the case, but it was designed and approved as a fully illuminated parking area.
I will say, I believe there was some concern with other projects in the area about truck traffic, so I think some nearby residents will welcome less truck traffic.
So one question on the change proposed from the truck traffic to pedestrian employee traffic being a higher density. When we looked at the traffic study that was performed, it looks like it was completed in July of 2022.
We've had more recently updated as of December, I think 27th or something like that, we submitted to PennDOT. And that letter, I believe you have comments from PennDOT reflective of that December 27th
Is that
date.
when the study was done or when you submitted that to PennDOT?
22nd.
I guess
that was the date on the traffic study,
Yeah.
the 22nd.
The point, the location is keyed in between several schools, but it'd probably be more apropos to have a school district season, evaluation, especially with that shift change that was proposed in here, or that Walgreens is proposing. Where
Specific traffic comments I can direct toward Scott Pasterski. He's the traffic engineer for the project. Any general site questions I'm happy to address. I can step back and Scott can come up if we're transitioning toward more traffic related questions.
We have any site related questions, or is there anyone in the audience?
One question. So you're saying that there's going to be less truck traffic because the actions within the building would change from a normal distribution center to some sort of fulfillment center? Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. But the products that are being fulfilled still need to leave.
They do.
So when, how, and by what?
Eric Friedman
Okay.
from Walgreens can direct.
Thank you. This is a pharmaceutical fulfillment center. We have a business partner or a wholesale partner in the Lehigh Valley area who will be bringing their bulk pharmaceuticals into our facility every morning. Typically, I'll say on average 2 trucks, many times 1 truck, but as an average 2 trucks come in our morning to help populate the workstations within our facility. We then spend the day filling prescriptions as we would behind a pharmacy counter, but at a higher rate. The completed prescriptions get bundled together and our partner will come in the evening to take those away. We are not distributing directly from this facility to our hundreds of stores that are being supported by this facility. Our partner in the operation takes away the completed orders in bulk to their facility, and they split out per store delivery route. They deliver on our behalf to our stores. And so we have in the evening, typically, again, I'll say on average 2 trucks in the evening. It might sometimes be 3 depending on volume, but 2 to 3 trucks leave at night with our completed orders for the day.
Great, thank you. Is that per shift or for the whole
No,
day?
no. So literally the morning, 5 to 6 a.m. is the inbound truck. We have 2 shifts that are filling prescriptions. The outbound is only at the end of the second shift, so that's very late at night towards the 10:30, 11:30 hour.
Okay, thank you.
Diane had a couple questions. The pedestrian walkway, is it paved? I believe it is.
It is. It's
Paved and striped.
Yes.
And then Eric mentioned that it will be fenced along pretty much the whole way, it sounded like. Is that correct?
That's what I.
Yeah, I believe our fence starts shortly after the throat. So there's a small connecting roadway or throat that leads from the back lot towards the truck court. And I don't think the fence runs all the way into the pedestrian lot. So it starts as you come around the bend into the open truck court. Our concern is for the trucks that might be backing in and out in different directions at the docks. And so it's a majority of the striped walkway. I wouldn't say it's 100% of the striped walkway.
It comes around the bend there to prevent people from cutting across the truck court as opposed to keeping along the back edge, but not necessarily fenced through the driveway and into the other end of the remote parking area.
That's correct.
Okay, there we go.
The last question,
So-
how many people on average comprise the shift?
Eric, how many people on average on a shift? The plan calls out 80 shift workers on 2 shifts. That's where we come up with 160 parking spaces, but there would be some off-shift workers, and Eric can probably shed some more light on that.
Right. Most of the staff at this location are here for the fulfillment roles. We do have a management team that is not in duplicate on our staffing roster. And so by that, I mean the site director, there's a site director, the HR lead, maintenance lead, et cetera. So there's about 12 to 15 individuals who work, I'll say normal office hours in the middle of the day, not starting at 5 a.m. They're not there until 10:30 p.m. So our in addition, and they're in addition to the 80 a.m. p.m. Shifted fulfillment team members.
I'm sorry, so is it 40 per shift or is it not including management?
80 per shift.
Thank you.
And what were the shift times? I don't know, I might have missed that if you already did. It was a question from Diane.
Eric, what are shift times?
Yeah, in talking with our program leadership today, it sounds like it might be shifting up a little bit earlier. At the time of our application and memos for this discussion this evening, we were planning a 6 a.m. start for the first shift. That might be pulling forward to 5 or 5:30 a.m. is the start of first shift. They're proposed to work until 2 p.m. We have a 1-hour gap in our production on the main floor from 2 to 3, with our second shift starting at 3 p.m. Again, running until most people till 11 p.m.
I have a question. Maybe it's zoning, maybe it's our staff. I should know the answer to this. 88 parking spots. Is that based on size of the building or number of employees or increasing passenger vehicle spaces?
Based strictly on number of parking spaces. So it's a percentage or a number up until 100 or something like that. 50 and above 500 or 1,000 goes by percentage. So we would provide the appropriate numbers of maybe spaces.
Thank you.
Are there any site-related questions? Are there any site-related questions from anyone in the audience or online? Does not look so. I believe there were some traffic-related questions. Thank you.
Good evening, good to see everyone. Again, it's Scott Pastorski with Keystone Consulting Engineers. I already have a presentation just ready to happy to answer any questions you may have about the traffic study.
I'll bring up the question I was alluding to before. With the traffic study, it looked like it was performed in July in the summer months, off school time of the year. With the shift change, like I think it was Mr. Friedman just mentioned, first shift coming off around 2 o'clock, second shift coming on around 3. The density of regular, passenger vehicles going out to 309. Would it be possible to have the traffic study, or was the December one in fact done during the school year?
So by saying the study, you mean the traffic count?
Yes.
When the data was collected, the cars were counted and whatnot. Yeah, the count was done, I believe it was in July. Our TIA, our traffic impact assessment, was prepared in accordance with any department standards. So anything we do with both Chapman's Road and 309 state highways. That comment sounds familiar. I think the Pidcock company had made a similar comment. And we did forward, as part of our recent resubmission, we did forward the comments to PennDOT. They want to take that under advisement and make us count a different time. We'd have to comply with any department requirements. I should mention this. We made a resubmission of our most recent traffic impact assessment on December 22nd. We did receive a handful, I believe it was 4 PennDOT review comments, which were very minor. We did address them and resubmitted on just on the 17th, I believe, of January, addressing those comments. One of the comments was to provide township comments. So Pidcock's letter was forwarded to them for their consideration.
Are there any other questions or traffic-related comments?
I guess the only fundamental question I have is, when all of this was thought out, it was originally proposed as a distribution center with trucks coming in on an hourly basis. And now it's going to be lots of cars coming in and more concentrated. The impact is different, but it's still the same. So concerns of the commission is that at certain key times, byproduct of traffic on 309 and coming off of Chapman is going to be a concern. So that's why we're being so granular.
Understood. I mean, in our TIA, we did have memos from Walgreens specifically outlining their operations, their shift times, the number of employees, things like that. That was disclosed to PennDOT. They had every, have and still have every opportunity to take the township's, thoughts on that, and if they so desire to require us to do whatever they may. But we did prepare a report in accordance with the department's, not sounding like a broken record, but in accordance with the department standards. And we did show no impact to the intersection.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that has traffic-related questions? Is there anyone online? Not seeing like it. So my understanding is we've done the traffic analysis, indicated no impact at the intersection, following the proper correct steps, but it's still going through the PennDOT review process. I believe some of us want to see more feedback from PennDOT and see what additional comments that they have. I understand you're doing everything as required for the traffic analysis. I think we want to see more of what PennDOT says based on some comments we provided, and then see the results of that.
Just another comment, are there any turning movements at the intersection of 309 and Chapman's that decrease in level of service, and how might those be addressed when PennDOT looks at those? I mean, the intersection may not have an overall decrease, but maybe something, individual turning movements might be impacted.
Right, so it's just for everyone's knowledge, when PennDOT looks at this, per their TIS guidelines and requirements, they judge it based on the overall, so the average delay of all turning movements across the whole intersection can't degrade more than 10 seconds. And that's, we beat that. However, certain turning movements within the intersection, depending on department discretion, can degrade or not degrade, depending on basically what they feel is important or not. As part of this analysis, we do meet the overall, but to Dave's point, the northbound left turn does degrade from a level service E to an F. I think it's a little over 34 second pickups that are a delay increase of that intersection. So to your question, as far as what could be done, not a lot without causing a cascading effect of improvements that build on each other. As soon as those intersection timings are touched, it requires that the yellow and all red clearance intervals of the traffic signal be revised to current standards. And it just, basically we lose time, and it creates this cascading effect that the domino effect, and then many dominoes fall after. So really there's nothing that can be done. I understand there's other projects in the area that one being a PennDOT project, and I don't have knowledge of timing of that and everything. That is planning programming to do significant improvements to that intersection, including the second southbound through lane. So it's not like there's not anything else on the horizon.
This is a conditional use review. So basically what we're looking for is, we did receive your comments for for the specific standards of warehouse and distribution. Within your project narrative, you stated that you would, at the meeting, demonstrate how you meet the general standards. So are you prepared to do that?
Personally prepared to talk about anything related to traffic. I'm just anyone else.
Greg, I thought the comment was that the general standards have been satisfied in connection with the original conditional use application.
This is a new application, so you still have to satisfy them in some way, shape, or form. And maybe you can do that by demonstrating your satisfaction with the previous one, but that's how I read your project narrative.
So I think in connection with, so in order to satisfy that requirement, I think what we were pointing to were the exhibits that we submitted originally back in 2019. And I don't know whether we have those loaded up on that computer, we can talk to those.
Give the page number.
No, I think it's on the flash.
Oh, yeah.
Flash.
So as I read the letter, the zoning letter, Ms. Harrier's letter, the newly revised plan changes should not reflect any major changes to A through L. So this is that the general standards run 350, section 350-18B1A through L. And Ms. Harrier's comment is the newly revised plan changes should not reflect any major changes to A through L, with the exception to letter H as it pertains to traffic. We were addressing traffic tonight.
Now you're prepared to address Ms. Harrier's comments for the specific standards.
Yes, and that's why, I don't know whether, Kevin, we have to,
There were several comments. One requested a truck routing map.
Could you speak into the mic?
Yeah. Greg, is there a specific section you're referring to, or are you referring just in general to the comments in the area review letter?
Yeah, I'm just referring to her comments in the review letter. She basically had a number of them where she felt you would address the comment. This is the specific standard, but there were a few that you did not.
Okay, so for instance, subsection G, it says a truck routing map shall be submitted to the page. Is that what we're referring to?
If I may break in, we have two separate, we have general standards and then we have specific criteria. So the specific criteria was addressed, but the general standards were not addressed again for this new conditional use application. So in the very first paragraph, my comment letter is twofold. So it starts out with the conditional use general standards, and then I wrote a comment stating that the general standards in the zoning ordinance listed in this section for conditional use approval were not included in this review. This is a new application and not an amendment to the previously granted approval, but rather a modification to the conditional use 2019-601 to adjust the number of cars and trucks utilizing the site. It shall be demonstrated the general standards criteria are in accordance with the plan submitted for this review dated December 22nd, 2022. The newly revised plan changes should not reflect any major changes. This was more or less an opinion of my opinion, with exception to letter H. So that has not been addressed under this new conditional use application, and that's what needs to be. So using the previous 2019-601, you could probably use those comments to demonstrate that they are met, and then just elaborate on letter H because of the congestion with the additional car traffic versus less truck. So the specific criteria, I also have that listed then, under those were the other questions.
Do you have H?
Mm-hmm.
What's it say?
Yeah, the general criteria speak to compatibility and what have you, and that's why we thought that in 2019 when it was decided that this was an appropriate project, to see conditional use approval, we thought that sort of spoke for itself. Nothing has changed. The building is now built. The ordinance hasn't changed. And so we can go through these one at a time and have the appropriate people on our side and our staff speak to them. That's an exercise the planning commission wants to go through. I mean,
I think a number of you weren't here for the original 2019, so. Be a good idea.
okay, so I mean, I guess they're more engineering related, I don't know how they figure out.
Yeah, honestly, I have not read through these. I'll just read them aloud as I'll adjust them as I read them and answer them as we go. The design characteristics, maintenance, operation of the use are such that the public health, safety, and general welfare will be protected, and reasonable consideration is given to, among other things, the character and suitability of the location in question and the zoning district, traffic safety, and road frequency. I mean, these are all inherent to the site itself, where the site is built where it's built, it's in a particular zoning district, it's along a particular road. This hearing here has really no impact on, I think, item A. So I would say based on the prior approval, this condition was deemed satisfied, the building is constructed, we're not proposing anything different than a specific tenant occupying the use. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Yeah, I think we're running into some procedural issues with it. Seems like.
Well, the point of a conditional use is twofold: to ensure that the applicant can meet all of the requirements of the general standards, which are in 350-18, I believe.
Yes.
And then whatever specific requirements, this would be under 350-48 W2, I believe. So that is something that is required in conditional use review. You are correct, it's simply a new tenant.
Yeah.
You're obviously not looking at the building because the building is constructed, but the point is you've got a new tenant coming in, that the fact that the tenant came in then kicks you out of your prior approval.
It's really, the basic bottom line is this is an approved by right use. It's consistent with what was contemplated at the time. It's just that the specifics of this user are somewhat different than a generic occupant that we had, anticipated at that time. So I'm happy to continue. I can go through item, A through whatever.
Ms. Harrier was kind enough to share with me the review letter from back in 2019, which in essence, I haven't gone through it in detail, but in essence speaks to how and that each of these specific criteria were met. And so we will be happy to have, when you ask anybody else to do anything from now, I'll do it myself, but we can have copies made and handed out to planning commission members. That would be a shortcut in this process.
And I think the zoning officer's current letter, the condition H is the one that had potential most change. So I think going through that condition and how the change in traffic patterns and traffic consistency might relate to condition H.
Okay, so condition H, for your reference, reads, provide safe and efficient access to roads and will not create traffic congestion, hazardous traffic conditions, or excessive traffic volume. So that's our whole intent of being here tonight. We've presented our traffic study to PennDOT. We've concluded that not only the site driveway, the intersection with Church Road, two site driveways, as well as the intersection of 309 and Chapman's Road will all function at acceptable and safe levels. I think that we're kind of on our way to, or have addressed comment H, and our conclusion is that we meet the standards of this condition.
I'm confused. What H we're talking about?
So
H of our packet. Section.
I gotta be honest, I don't believe it's in your packet. And I think
package on page 115. There's an H.
yes, that's from 350-4802. He's talking about subsection H from 350-18.
It's on page 43 of the zoning ordinance.
Okay, well, we don't have that. These are, so we gotta take a pause here before we have something to follow along with.
Okay.
Yeah, so you might want to wait on.
But are we suggesting that what Laura is stating from her January 16th
memo is not applicable? Because it seems to be that they're missing some submission she's.
And from her letter that's in your packet, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I
so
feel
you
you're
can see,
on
you can
the,
see that,
I feel you're on the right path. It's just, I think we need a little more time to review the information and specifically 350-18B and go through all those items. I understand it was approved in 2019 under that circumstances. Now the circumstances have changed. One might consider it not extremely major change, but it is still a large change. So I think we need a little more time to get that documentation from you, listing all those items out, for a new application opposed to just referring to 2019.
Yeah, and I would say that, once again, this is a new application for a conditional use review. So the standards are you have to meet the general plus any specifics. And I hate to do the Board of Commissioners disservice by not going through those and having the Planning Commission not having done that.
So what I'm hearing, or what I think I'm hearing is that we're probably in large part going to be reproducing what we produced in 2019. Is it compatible with the comprehensive plan? We said in 2019 that it wasn't for these reasons. I don't think we did that because, in this case, because we thought it would be duplicative. If it were 20 years ago, we probably would have done that. It was 2.5 years ago, so we thought, again, it'd be sort of duplicative. We'll follow the planning committee. And the other thing I want to do, to the extent we're going to be asked to come back and provide additional information to satisfy these criteria, when we have a conversation about what would satisfy the criteria, I don't want to come back in a month and have you say, I'd like A through D, but the rest of the letters aren't, or not to my satisfaction, come back and see it's going to be a month.
Yeah, we can definitely, like we were printing the information, take a look at it now and.
So how does Diane Kelly get that information? She's a voting member. Mr. Chairman, if I might, Mr. Chairman, if I might, I think what's being said is, to summarize, I don't know how that, but in the general standards, you're looking for primarily general health, safety, welfare. So an understanding of the specific use, are they going to store flammable chemicals? Are they going to store other items that may be contrary to what a spec building was represented to this board and to the Board of Commissioners, 2.5 years ago? Because it is a new use, you obviously are going to have to, at the hearing, and the Planning Commission would like to hear that also before they make their recommendation, go through those to address and to make sure that there are no red flags that may pop up as to this type of use. I think that's what Mr. Adams was getting at. And obviously there's going to be a record made, an opinion generated, and, it's going to address the fact that you have met or have not met not only the general, but also the specific standards. I think, Mr. Adams, that's where you were coming from.
Yes.
So while it may seem like a recreation of the wheel, 30 years from now, when I'm not here, and other planning commission members decide they may have better things to do on Thursday evenings, somebody can look at it as a historic record and say, okay, they've met all the requirements, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's what you're saying, but generally speaking, it's the general conditions, as you and I know, are health, safety, welfare. So a description as to what's being done, the remedial remedial measures in place in the event that there is a problem, whatever. But that's where I think this is going, now that we have a specific user for this portion of the building. Is that fair?
That was my intention, yes.
So I think this is largely going to be sort of a cut and paste exercise from 2019. To your point, Mr. Adams, board has changed over since we were here last, so that's fair. That's a fair point. I guess the frustration lies in the fact that I wasn't involved in the submission of the application, but I guess had we thought about it in advance, we would have provided all that information initially, and we'd be here going through them one at a time, and we could get through that tonight without too much stuff. So, but I'm hearing you say that you would like to receive that and go through that at a subsequent meeting. What it feels like I'm doing. Put that thought in your head, it's not already there, but it's what it feels like where we're headed.
And that would certainly give you time to address Laura Harder's comment.
And while it may seem like it's regurgitation of what's been said 2.5 years ago, it's a requirement, and I know that South Whitehall will dot its i's and cross its t's, and so while much of it may be regurgitation, there may be something in there that the planning commission will look at and say, well, what do you mean by X, Y, and Z?
Fair enough. Is that another option?
I think it's an option if you guys are willing to hear it. That's how I read your project narrative, the very last lines of it, or that you would do this verbally at the meeting.
If there's a way to avoid delaying the decision.
Well, we still have to go through the hearing, don't we?
Board of Commissioners hearing, yes, but the Board of Commissioners wants recommendations coming out of planning commission.
Right, and we don't even have the conditions or proposed.
The general standards. Yeah.
So I think they're making a copy of the 2019 letter, and that would be read into the record and commented on. So Diane would hear that commentary, so that would satisfy that piece of it. And I guess it's just a question of going through that letter and noting any updates or any specificities of this new tenant and how that might affect any relation to those conditions of the uses or of the standards. So I think there is a potential to go verbally as noted in the letter or in the project narrative that it was going to be handled verbally. But apparently there might be a problem with the copier. It's a new copier.
I think, I think for the record's sake, as an individual, I prefer to see it, right? Even though it's been expressed that it can be done otherwise, and it does still leave out the one thing that the zoning officer is requesting, the routing map.
Yeah, I think that's loaded up on the, yeah, I think there's a copy of that. Loaded.
It's the one with the blue and red lines on the road. There you go. That's all it is. That indicates, it's called a truck routing map. It indicates that all truck traffic will be directed from the site north on Chapman's Road to Route 309. There are signs prohibiting trucks, I believe, over 40 feet from turning right or going south on Chapman's Road.
Thanks for doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're eventually you're going to have to come back, so we can discuss this, but I don't think we're ready to make any decision. We're seeing this right now for the first time, and I understand your position. It seems like it's a lot of the same thing, but we have to cross our T's, dot our I's, and it's also important for, the township residents that we go to thoroughly look at.
If we are coming back and we can talk a little bit about PennDOT issue, because it seemed like earlier in the meeting we were sort of leaning in that direction anyway, because we hadn't finalized things with PennDOT. Just to be clear, and ultimately, and probably something you already know, but PennDOT's going to decide what, if any, improvements we need to make, roads that we need to make to mitigate our traffic. And so I guess what I'm guarding against is if we do come back in a month and we haven't heard from PennDOT, or we haven't heard a final word from PennDOT, would it be possible to get a recommendation from this board to the Board of Commissioners, subject to our installing any improvements that PennDOT require? The question that makes sense, as I articulate that, I want to make sure.
We can provide, feedback tonight, but you will have to come back.
Oh, no, understood. I just mean when we come back. If we haven't reached, if we're still at the 5-yard line of PennDOT, we don't have the exact universe of improvements, if any, that they will require for the project. Would you still be willing to move us on as a Board of Commissioners?
I don't necessarily want to speculate. I feel we'll definitely be in a much better position. Continue to coordinate with township staff and work through any traffic items and the coordination of PennDOT and keep township staff up to speed. I think that would be a key item, and the township staff will keep us updated with the progress. So I can't make any progress promises. I can't speculate, but if you continue to coordinate with our traffic engineer and staff, that will help move along.
Okay. And is that the idea, Greg, is the thought that we'd come back in February?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to off the top of your head know the date of that.
Not off the top of my head. No.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's the third Thursday, whatever that is.
Okay. No worries.
It would be the 16th.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, of course, that being said, we will need an extension. Please, Grant.
You're not. No, yeah, of course. We'll
Work with us now.
I say that and I didn't turn around and ask my client to get the nod. So, all right, I'll try that. Yeah.
Greg.
Yes, sir. We'll do it now, right? Sure. Yeah. By the way, I don't want to hold everybody up. I'm just writing my name and providing an extension. So if you want to table us or whatever you're going to do next, by all means, I'm just handing this up to Greg when I'm done filling it out.
Anyone in the audience or online? Have comments or questions?
No comments.
All right, so do you need anything from us tonight? No one?
A motion just for record purposes as to take it under advisement, to table, whichever you.
I make a motion to take it under advisement.
There's a comment online. Eric's asking, is the Chapman's Road manor to be continued on February 2nd in order to address the full conditional use? February 16th, thank you. The full conditional use requirements.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's okay, great.
Yep. Trevor Domba. Aye. Tim Dugan.
Aye.
Andrew Flagg.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly. David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Chairman, for done, my business this evening is concluded. Take my leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in February.
Yes.
Do you know what page the ordinance is on?
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah.
No.
Is that mine? I'll take
We're on
that.
agenda item number 6, zoning amendment. For A, requirements for planning commission review of special exception appeal.
Oh. It's pontificated. Ah.
I'll keep it quick. Yes, I do. Good, I need a little exercise. We'll see how long. Hopefully not. All right, this first one is basically the planning commission review of special exception. You had seen an earlier version a month or two ago. It's been reviewed, had some comments to it. Since then, we had a rethink of how this should be done. The idea is that this is, a special exception review is very similar to a conditional use review. The venues at the end are different. Special exception goes to zoning hearing board, conditional use goes to board of commissioners, but otherwise, they're pretty much identical procedures. So I looked at it that way and said, okay, how can we make the two consistent so that basically the procedures are more or less interchangeable? And that would make it easier in the ordinance because one set of rules governs the application. So I have updated the proposed amendment. And at this point, we are just looking at the special exception stuff. So I'm going to give you the page numbers within the book to look at and explain what's going on there. Page 137 is the existing special exception standard. First off, subsection I explains what special exceptions are. Secondly, you then see the general conditions that we'd be looking for. I forgot they're actually in this. So there they are. Those are the general conditions, all 12 of them. So they're basically the same if it's special exception and conditional use. Then you go into hearings and decisions, and this shows you how you run hearings through public notice, and then how the zoning hearing board does their hearings. Now here, the special exception gets pretty nitty gritty because I think a lot of this comes right out of the MPC or very close to it. It's a little different once you get to the zoning hearing board as to how things are done, but getting there is basically identical to conditional use. So that's what's currently in the ordinance. So let's skip ahead. I'm really debating whether to go through the colored sections because that's mightily confusing. But basically, starting on page 147, we're going to take out the purpose shown in special exception, and what's going to be replacing it is something that is more consistent with conditional use. So there might be some tweaks there, but for the most part, you're going to see under purpose something very similar on both sides. Fees. There was a section in fees in there. I've updated and moved it to under the purpose. And then we go to general standards and criteria. Once again, pretty much identical to what you had seen there. Those will remain. From there, I remove hearings and decisions and add in special exception review by the Planning Commission. And this will closely mirror what these conditional use review by Planning Commission is. So basically, you start off with what's involved. This one here, we don't want all special exceptions to be reviewed by Planning Commission because there are a few residential special exceptions. Right now, there's only one, but we're looking to have a second one added very soon. Low impact, no impact, home-based, actually low impact home-based businesses will be residential. And to have a resident come into the Planning Commission where they need a lawyer, we feel is a bit onerous for residential. Now, commercial, institutional, we have no problems having them come before you. Most of the time, those are with regard to land developments. So they're going to be doing land developments anyway. So they will already have their engineers and their attorneys with them. So we feel that it's fair that you review those. So basically, that first section under 3 states that. And then we have how the application gets to you guys. So under A, if there's a zoning permit out there, the zoning officer denies it first. Then B, what they're supposed to submit, which is the application and all supporting documents. And once again, this is going to look very similar to conditional use. C, the zoning officer reviews them and distributes them. Pretty much what they do now. We do go through some guidelines as to how quickly this should be done. We do talk about completeness review, which has to be accomplished within 5 days. The MPC requires special exceptions to start the clock as soon as a receipt is issued by the municipality. So they have 60 days from when that receipt is issued. Right now, we're incorporating a completeness review, and that's the 5-day process. If their application is complete, including payment, then they're given a sufficient receipt that formally accepts it. That's when the clock starts. If it's not, they're given a list of what they're deficient in and told you have to come back. The entire application goes back to them, including payment. That does not start the clock, at least according to what we're saying. And I guess Zader Law might want to comment on that, but I think we're on reasonably firm ground with that.
I agree.
So then D is basically distribute the materials to the reviewing agencies, much as they do now. E is public notice. This will be standalone, where all other public notices in special exception conditional use will refer back to this. So these are the standards that the township currently goes through. These are way above and beyond what MPC requires. So, and it does clarify a few things we've come across in the MPC. So first one is obviously the newspaper, which is 2 publications, no less than 7 days, 2 weeks apart. First one, no less than 30, not more than 30 days. And now we're clarifying the second one is not less than 14 days from the hearing date. And then the second publication, no less than 7 days from the date of the hearing and has to be at least 5 days apart from the first and second. And that's a clarification that we've come across lately, and it helps all future zoning officers who are doing this to understand what they have to meet. Then the next one is the mail out, putting on the township website, posting the door, and then posting the property. So these we all currently do now. This merely codifies it. And as I said, any other public notice requirements in those 2 items, either special exception or conditional use, will refer back to this. So that will be the standard. After that, the zoning officer and all reviewers have 15 days to review the material and get them back to the township, at which point they'll be put in the packet and given to you guys to review. So 35 days, within 35 days of a receipt of a completed submission is the standard that you have to review. If you can't, if for some reason, like tonight, conditional use, they can't make the standard, then an extension has to be granted. And last but not least under that, failure to communicate any comments to the zoning hearing board does not prevent the zoning hearing board from hearing and deciding on the event. And that is similar to, that is special exception. I believe the language is the same under conditional use. So the idea is that you get your comments in or they're not heard.
Question. So in section C, you noted as 5 business days, but everywhere else is just days. Is that to be assumed or set as calendar days?
5 business days.
Correct. It's noted as 5 business days once, but everywhere else it is 30 days, 14 days, 7 days, 5 days.
Yeah, you're right. That should be calendar days. I believe the rest of them are calendar days. Yep.
You might want to clarify that.
Yep. So noted. Now, after that, we do go into special exception use by the zoning hearing board. Really, that is pretty much the same except for renumbering. The only difference is A refers back to the public notice standards. So the zoning hearing board hearing is actually re-noticed according to the standards that I go. And with everything else remaining the same, that's pretty much the amendment. Question?
No, I think it's really well done. Like,
Better, yeah.
It helps the hearing board.
I think it's better.
It helps the hearing board, helps us, helps the township, helps the applicant.
Yeah. And so when we ever re-adopt the zoning ordinance, we will ensure that both sides, special exception and conditional use, are consistent throughout. So if you've done one, you'll be very familiar with the other.
Yeah, I think it's pretty detailed and gives the entire path of what needs to be done, which is spells it all out.
It lays out expectations of everybody involved. It's good.
Good. I will make the change on the days. And then that's it. It's up to you if you want to see the changes and the final format of it. I'm fine with that. Bring back in a future meeting. If you want to move it on now, I'm fine with that too.
That's a big idea. Yeah, I'd be.
It's not taken.
Is there, anyone else have comments or anyone in the audience or online? Anyone want to make?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Who seconded? Okay, Tim Dugan.
Aye.
Trevor Dombach.
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
What is the motion? I couldn't hear.
Motion to recommend adoption by the Board of Commissioners.
With the edit of calendar, specifying the calendar days.
Aye.
And Andy Fleck. Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. While I'm here.
I was just alphabetical, and then I was like, ooh.
Sorry about that.
You probably don't have a description.
I don't.
Great, we're on agenda item number 6B. Residential impervious surface zoning ordinance amendment.
Okay, this is the 4th meeting that we're going to talk about this. I hope the last. Basically, we separated this out of zoning service pack 2C. At the last planning commission meeting, we talked about this. I'm not going to say at length, but given sufficient direction for me to make changes. Yeah. 174, 175. So basically, what I heard the last planning commission was that you were not in favor of reducing the amount of impervious surface for township residents at residential lots. Understandable? I tweaked the chart to do that. The other thing that you did like was anything over the zoning hearing board, zoning ordinance limit on residential impervious surface would be a special exception use, which then could be taken to the zoning hearing board and allowed a manner of going over and above, which currently we don't have. So that one was kept in as well. So basically speaking, if you look on page 175, the little chart in green, that's what's there currently. If you move over to page 176, on the chart on the left-hand side, which is all the blue, that's what would replace the chart in green. The red section to the right shows you the practical impact of what those changes are. So for example, we did talk about how 100% impervious surface for small lots, 0 to 5,000 square feet, was probably not a good idea. And I think that was agreeable to everyone. I think even Mark Luth suggested the 80% is a good cap. So that's what I put the cap at, 80%. And then as you move down the chart, the lots get bigger. You can see the effect on impervious surface as an amount of square footage or as a percentage of the lot is on the right-hand side. So what I tried to do as that percentage was, at the top end of each category, that would match what is in the green chart on 175. Now, I had to play with the numbers so they're not exact matches, but they generally exceed what we're looking for. So basically, if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you're allowed 75% of your lot as impervious surface. If you have a 25,000 square foot lot, you're allowed 66% of your lot as impervious surface. And so on until you get to over 5 acres. And basically, if you look at page 177, and that horrible line graph that I keep showing you, the black line with the jagged edges is what you see now. That is what is permitted in South Whitehall. The green line is what is proposed on the new chart. So as you can see, except for the very low end, where that 80% rule has been put in place. Everywhere else, that township resident will maintain or improve on the amount of impervious surface their lot would be allowed to have.
I guess the one question is, did we discuss what other municipalities, townships, do? And are we consistent or not in this forward?
And stop my father.
Here's a trick.
Oh. That's wrong. So I called around to the surrounding municipalities and I asked them two-pronged question. I said, how are you doing it now? And then I explained what we want to do with tying in salvo and then stormwater management stuff. I said, are you doing that? I got responses from 4 of them. So, Lorma Kanji, I'm not doing anything. Basically, I think they have the same thing we have now, which are lot percentage. They're not doing anything with regard to tying it into other ordinances. Salisbury said the same thing. 2 different reasons. Lorma Kanji, I think they're a little more loose. Salisbury basically told me, we're fairly well built out. So we don't have a lot of big lots left to develop. So they're more worried about single lots coming in, and in which case, a standard percentage on that lot is sufficient. Upper McCungy, on the other hand, they're doing the same thing with regard to lot percentage of impervious surface, but their zoning officer felt that they were headed in the direction of starting to tie other ordinances into it. They're having similar issues with MS4, but it's not to the point of where we're at, where we think we're at. North Whitehall, on the other hand, they recently adopted a combined stormwater and MS4 ordinance. So they're probably ahead of us with regard to that. So he said they just did it. The zoning officer wasn't really up to date on it because it had only been recently adopted, but he went through and read a few passages and he said, yes, some of this is what you were saying is in this ordinance. So normally they've got the percentage of lot size either stepped or flat across the board, but only North Whitehall is ahead of us with this concept of tying other ordinances together to this. So that's where we're at this point. Brian, were you able to talk to somebody else in PC? Because I know you mentioned that, but.
Yeah, and they gave a similar response. They didn't really deal with 62 municipalities. They had mentioned in North Whitehall one, I think it was Fort Township. I'm not positive what that was. But the trend in the future is where we, and apparently North Whitehall is driving the train. A little bit more proactive, but as Mr. Reese would say, stormwater is very convoluted and deal with impervious and all that stuff. So.
Yeah.
We are in the minority of all the 62. A lot, he would say 50% is pretty much status quo, like the lower max, the stuff. And the cities, that's one other animal.
Yes. Yeah, they have different issues. So basically speaking, we're more or less, I would say a little higher than status quo, but not. And then really this is to fix a couple specific problems. I keep saying this, go back to that jagged line. We haven't really had any fall in that jagged spot, but why wait until somebody does before you fix a problem that we already know exists? To provide the special exception approval for those over, I think is a benefit. That definitely, that alone I would say we should do. And then lowering the very small lots to 80% just seems to make sense. So that's it. Any questions or comments?
I think they're good revisions. It does not negatively impact existing residents. They still have the percentage are still allowed the same percentage, if not more. And it solves the issue where if someone had a larger lot, if they just went over a certain threshold and have a larger lot, they're suddenly
a huge drop off.
have a drop off in the amount of impervious cover there allowed. So this solves that
Kind of eliminates the third rail, like you're being punished because you just went a little too big, and
So,
it's not real equitable.
as a real example, I have a 1.2 acre lot. And this adjustment would take me from 13,068 feet allowed to 23,800 feet. Because I'm not.
That's probably about right. I hate for you to be the
ordinance.
That's, I guess that's,
Yeah.
With nothing else,
that's my concern.
Yeah.
Say this is not. And now everyone gets more. There's still going to be a little more, but if you have 100 lots and everyone gets 2,000 square feet, there's still going to be, how is that going to work in terms of everyone's based on size versus allowance? So that's all going to be, has to be looked at before everyone just comes in with the new patio tomorrow. The day after it's approved, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is actually how it works today.
Sure, no,
So
I'm
there is
just
no
making
change,
sure.
it's just, I think the biggest change is what Mr. Dugan said. You know, I have the 1.2 acre lot, and
No.
because of that drop, I get punished, whereas my neighbor at 0.99 gets more impervious surface.
I'm just trying to make sure that everyone's, cognizant of, although they might by zoning get more, we're kind of
Yes,
still stuck.
there's NIPD's permits through the Conservation District and DEP that may, I guess, supersede the zoning. And I believe, Greg, we were discussing that and you sort of separated this item out in terms of moving forward with development to account for in doing stormwater design, saying the design has to account for the lots being maxed out. That way, the design has a small house and then the community stormwater controls it based on small houses in the lots. Then you have 100 homeowners come in and they want a pool or a big deck, then they can build it because it's already, designed. The community, the subdivision's already designed to include those backyard decks, patios, pools, etc.
Yeah, that's, I was gonna say, that's something that is a future concept.
Okay.
So obviously, we are looking at adoption of a comp plan soon. Once we do that, obviously, we're going into zoning, zoning ordinance rewrite, saldo rewrite, stormwater management for consistency. So this is a topic that I'm sure we're gonna look hard at. Then when that comes around, it'll come around and you'll probably see it again.
For the planning commission's info, Alvin County, based on some work that our company's done, goes deep into that question. So there's questions on how much impervious is there per lot, how much is left aside, how big are the houses shown on the plan, how big are the houses intended to be, which leaves how much for patio. So those are all questions that actually come from Upland Country Township's Planning Commission to applicants. So please feel free to start dive in deeper. I know that the development that we have submitted this month, coming in for next month, we have previously requested a chart to put on the plan that says, here is your record plan showing the amount of impervious you have per lot. That's determined at this point by the developer. If the developer wants to give everyone 2,000 square feet and build a 1,990 square foot home and give them 10, there's nothing that we can do. Only can say that the house fits on the lot for the smaller base. If they choose to give a bigger base and give 500 more per lot, that's a benefit to the homeowner. I don't know if they're going to do that because there's nothing in play at this point to say that you have to give 15% more than the size of your house. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get at this, but nothing is in play right now or a rule that says not only do you have to design your basement for the house and the driveway, but you also have to go 10% more. We're not there yet. I think that's step 2, but those are different ways to think about it because if we say you have to do a maximum impervious per certain amount, that house is going to be 10 square foot less because that means they sell a bigger house and, get more revenue from it. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but there's a lot of questions that are starting to come up by different planning commissions, different municipalities that are really kind of pounding this home that, one, you're going to have to provide for the house, and 2, that you're going to have to give extra because everyone moves into their dream house and the first thing they want is a patio or an outdoor space or blank. And to hear the answer, no, you can't do what you want to do, Township gets a ton of questions. So feel free to pump it out more and ask more questions because it's happening other places.
And always feel free to focus, ask some questions.
Gotcha.
But question, is there any value or any thought, like, based on some of these conversations, like, that there's some kind of disclaimer or explanation, or does it already exist here within, with the zoning?
I don't know if there's a specific, I believe there probably is something in the zoning ordinance that states that this should not be construed as the end all be all, because this is just zoning. So obviously, land development, you don't have to just comply with zoning, you have to comply with salary, comply with stormwater, all different agencies. So rather than put that into every single section, I think it's just either upfront somewhere or it's basically understood.
Yeah, I would have to look for that specifically to see, disclaimer wise. I haven't had to look for disclaimers. But I have one question, and only because I like the planning commission's recommendations on certain things or advice. The special exception for residential, you said, would not go to the board, and for the most part, I agree with that. However, and I know it's very rare that it would probably happen in the case of a residential, someone exceeding and coming in, and I know on page 176, 1A at the bottom, you say that it is a special exception, but then also that the applicant provides evidence that adjoining properties are adequately protected, so forth and so on, by providing information. That would be something that, because of stormwater and such items, because of it exceeding, I think, is there a way that we could have an exception in this case that we could get some type of advice from the board prior to going to zoning hearing board for the special exception and kind of to weigh in on stormwater?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I would think that.
What evidence? What is evidence? Is it engineered drawings and stuff? Or
Possibly. I mean, here.
Have to go to an acre.
Let's take some scenarios, okay? Say somebody wants to put 85% impervious surface on their 4,000 square foot lot. Okay? That exceeds, the 80% threshold. So basically speaking, I don't believe there's any additional reviews required at 4,000 square feet. 5,000, we've got an ENSC plan, 10,000, we've got a stormwater management plan, 1 acre is an NEPD's permit. So basically from that, I'm not quite sure what they have to present.
What about an individual operating plan?
That could be good enough.
Because, so I mean, you decide to pave the whole side of your yard. Now, if that affects your neighbor downstream, because now all the sheet flow is going down into this window well. That would be reviewed on an individual operating plan, submitted to the township to show contours and grading that it's at least getting to an inlet or the street or something that's different than.
Yeah.
Is
Whereas
that more appropriate for staff and township engineer? Like if it's a single family home and a person buys a home and do these things, is it more appropriate to go through staff and township engineering opposed to a whole planning commission?
And I think that's how it used to be.
If I can just clarify.
Yeah.
I'm only referring to lots that are over 5 acres. Okay, that's all I'm referring to, is lots over 5 acres, because it's my understanding that number 1 states that's the only one that would need a special exception. How is that reading number 1? Lots that contain residential use that exceed the maximum coverage. So is that for every one of these?
Yes, that's for every one of them, yes. Yes, so like I said, if you have a 4,000 square foot lot and you want to go to 85%, then you're exceeding the requirement, and then you have to go for special exception.
So in the case, like what Tony just said, we wouldn't need special exception for those. Individual operating plans, kind of is what we do now, under the professional staff consultation, we get that application, and that's how we do them. It's the ones that are the 5 acres and over.
No, you're missing something. He's saying ILGP would be the evidence that you would take to the zoning hearing board.
Okay.
Because if, for example, you take this section out and just leave it as it is, they wouldn't be able to do 85% coverage. They'd have to go for a variance. And then they'd have to prove what the hardship is. And it's very hard to prove there's a hardship for that extra 5% impervious coverage. So that the ILGP would be the evidence they would take to the zoning hearing board to prove that they've met that. Whereas if they go to like 12,000 square feet, at that point they'd have to, under our ordinance, they have, at over 10, you have to go get a stormwater management plan. That's something they'd have to do anyway. So at this point, they would take that to the zoning hearing board. Here's my approved stormwater management plan. There's your evidence. Once you get over an acre, that's an NPDES permit. That's got nothing to do with zoning. That's PADEP regulation. Same thing. So we have steps along the way that provide that.
That's why I feel that it's redundant to do the special exception request for those, when we already have those.
It's not, because if you have this table in place, the only way to go over the limit is by variance. And as we've seen, they're not going to get a variance for that. The special exception grants them the ability to go and ask for that, so long as they can provide the evidence, and it allows the zoning hearing board, if they feel necessary, to attach reasonable conditions to the plan.
Should we codify what evidence means? So should we say, like, if it's individual operating plan, if it's less than X square feet, and then like you were just describing, how you need the NIPD's permit if it's over a certain thing. So that way it's very clear in the ordinance what that evidence needs to be to go to the zoning hearing board.
Sure, that's easy.
I think that might be a way to kind of address it and codify it.
Yeah, that's easy. Because we know what those are.
Yes. Diane commented, it seems the option of special exception for all residential may end up with development that will go around zoning regulations, which we have in place to have consistency in planning.
I guess that depends on how you look at it. Basically, a special exception use like a conditional use they are permitted uses in the zoning district that allow the higher boards to look at it specifically in the context of that project. So that gives you the ability to say, these sort of things we want to look at, we will allow them, but we want to look at them with a higher standard. Much like the warehousing distribution. It allows us to look at it and say, yes, this is permitted use, but if we think that you need a few extra conditions attached to it, this procedure allows us to do that. It allows us to dig deeper into it, and then come up with possible conditions to attach to it. So I guess one point is, yes, you can look at it as getting around the zoning ordinance. On the other hand, you can look at it and say, this is something that we think is fine for the neighborhood. It's just that for every specific use, we want to take a deeper look at it.
So 4 or 5,000 square foot lot, we're saying 80% impervious.
Yeah.
I come in and say, I want to make it 100% impervious, special exception. So I have the right to do that.
You have the right to do it, but then, but
zoning is going to attack, someone's going to say, well, you need controls of this or something.
yeah, you need to put a little French, a French drain in to prevent your neighbor from getting overwhelmed. And it's got to be a reasonable condition that we already regulate.
Yeah, and I think a large part of last month's discussion was the concern that it would restrict current and future residents, if they did want a big backyard deck and that exceeds the allowable impervious coverage, it gives a resident, a homeowner, the opportunity to get that approved.
Right, or somebody who has a large lot and has to do a long driveway, which, obviously that's allowed impervious surface right there. But it allows you then to look at that in context and say, oh, yeah, you've got a 10-acre lot, and because of the topography, you have to have a 5,000-foot driveway that's, 12 feet wide. Well, that's a lot of impervious, but there's a good reason for that, and how do we address that? Well, put swales on the side of the road, do something to mitigate any possible impacts to your neighboring properties.
So if we put in the evidence and we spell out exactly what that evidence, that will include a report from an engineer of some sort that says this works or this doesn't work. Because I'm going through kind of Diane's scenario here, and I'm starting to think, what if they put 100% impervious on a 5-acre lot? And zoning hearing board, we don't have engineering review with them. So we would be relying on whatever we're requiring in that evidence.
Right.
So my immediate reaction to the comment from Diane was maybe we need to put caps in there, not to exceed X. But
remember,
I think
for something like that, you're talking about an NPDES permit.
yes, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
But yeah.
And that's the thing. There will be other reviews being done by this, and that's kind of the point, is to require those reviews basically to be presented as evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But that goes back to my main question. Is there any way that because of the stormwater involved, should that happen, is there any way to have them look at it and review it so that they could also give comments, because they're familiar with the stormwater and how it works. Like Dave was saying, we don't have an engineer, so zoning hearing board, the zoning hearing board would be relying on the applicant, and that's it. No.
They'd be relying on the evidence. I'm not talking.
Yeah, he's saying they would be relying on the evidence. If an engineer came in with a signed and sealed plan with an approval from LCCD or DEP, that's sufficient. And I don't think you guys can make any comment to that. I mean, they're the experts. Usually, that's what you guys want to see when.
But can we require signed and sealed engineered drawings reviewed by the LCCD for a 5,000 square foot lot? They wouldn't do that. For a residential lot, I don't.
We're
5,001?
we're kind of running up against that.
Diane,
I could
question.
Yeah.
I don't know, to me, that's super.
I mean, I think that's, not to overpower, I apologize, but I mean, that's, I think, part of the individual agreeing plan is because there are times that we do this for other municipalities and we request calculations, or request, an analysis to what's going on and how much water, where's it going, and, you know, there's a process that we go through for them. And, so there's an opportunity to get a sealed plan in the individual operating plan process with calculations that's reviewed by our office, and then our letter would go to the township if they use that as zoning hearing board. They could use that as zoning hearing board, I would say.
Yeah.
So if you involve us in the review of a special exception, even if it may be outside the purview of the planning commission, it's still reviewed by staff consultation. That we saw here.
Yeah. I mean,
It's the truth.
I gotta be honest, I mean, you guys are great at what you do, but I don't know if you'd be adding much value to something. I mean, if somebody brings in, say, 12,000 square foot lot, or I'm sorry, 12,000 square foot of impervious surface, they come in to you with an approved stormwater management plan.
It would become a log, you know.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say about that? Yes, you've gotten it.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I don't think the planning commission may not always have the luxury of a few engineers on the commission, so to me, I'm sorry. Township engineer make more sense.
Yeah.
I guess my only concern is that if the planning commission is determining the chart and the remedies associated with it, to bring an issue back to the planning commission, you're asking the planning commission to review what they've already determined.
There's that.
And I find that to be in conflict with what the intent of planning is and what the intent of zoning is. So I'm a little uncomfortable.
So Diane's comment, is there information the township has gathered over the past year or so of how many residents have approached the township and have had issues with our current regulations? If yes, would you share that info with the PC so we may fully understand what the issues our residents are facing?
Past year. I don't believe any happened past year. It would have been 2 or 3 years ago.
For that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years. But I have to be honest here. The reason why I'm bringing this forward is I see the potential for problems. There may not have been any, but as a planner, that's what I do. I look ahead and see what could cause a problem. And if I see something that I think could be a problem, as I do here, I don't want to wait until one of our residents is caught in it. I want to fix that now, because if we wait, that resident probably won't get satisfaction for 6 months or a year, if ever. And that's why I'm doing this, is because I see where this could, like Mr. Dugan, it could catch him in that. And I'd rather not. And you know, why not fix something before it becomes a problem, rather than wait for somebody to have a problem and then we have to go and try to fix it.
I do feel we're being proactive here. That dragging line, it could be an issue with homeowners.
Yeah.
I think we just need to define evidence.
And that's easily done because the township has standards and the state has standards. So basically, the township standards are 5,000 square feet is E&S plan, 10,000 square feet is an improved stormwater management plan, and 1 acre is an improved NPDES plan. So those are your standards. And below 5,000 feet, an approved ILGP.
Of impervious, or is that?
Yeah, that's impervious. That's impervious.
IG, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Individual lot grading plan, ILGP, sorry. So if I could put that in as what is required as evidence, and all of them have to be approved by engineers or the appropriate reviewing agencies.
Going over this the fourth time or so. I think we made some good progress on evidence. Clearly indicating what the evidence is. I'm fine with it. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Motion or? We want to see it with all that stuff Greg just mentioned, or up to you?
I was kind of disappointed that Mark isn't here.
How much do we have in the agenda for next month, other than Montour?
Oh, well. We have Ridge Farm 1B is coming back. Now they're gonna alternate, 1B 1 month, 1C the next. Then we have Parkland New Operations Center is back. And Dorney Park Project 2024 is back. And of course, as you saw tonight, the conditional use will return, hopefully with better material.
I mean, I think we're pretty close on this, so I don't know if I don't want to speculate or anything. If that language is happening. Much more to cover next time.
Any other thoughts? I would just request, in terms of ENS review, they may be very good at what they do for ENS. They're not going to get individual operating plans to see about size yard swale.
Yeah, maybe that's.
I think that's why.
Township engineer should be involved in that.
Well, we appreciate the reviews. There's a level of critique. So I think that individual operating.
We'll get with the township engineer and discuss what is appropriate at that level.
Okay, real question is, do we want to give it a month and do the final updates?
We'll go to. If we're busy, I'll hold up.
I assume my opinion would be to punt to the next meeting or the following, or not to the following, whatever, just to see this one final. There's been a lot of back and forth on it. I like
to
this.
see clean with the updates and no problem. To the full board.
I think we're close to the finish line though.
Yeah, I do like it.
We just got a yellow flag just 2 laps ago. Okay.
I guess I'll make a motion to table it. The discuss edits regarding the evidence. Second.
So get that in. Tim Dugan. Trevor Dombach.
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
Aye.
And your flag. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Jim and lady.
All right, we're running a little behind schedule. We're on agenda item number 7. Traffic Planning Commission annual report.
You want to take this? I take this?
You can start.
Okay, this is the third year, I believe, we've had an annual report. So this should be getting to be old hat for some of you. Basically, this is the template that we've done in the past 2 years, and now this is the third. So this is our annual report for last year. So on the left-hand side, we show members, past, present, not future yet, and what the board is tasked to do. Moving to the next page, 180. This shows what you guys reviewed last year, 10 major plans, 1 minor plan, and 3 zoning amendments. Also, it shows the 11 monthly joint BOC Planning Commission workshops on top of all that. You got lots of extra pay. We have the 2022 goals and aspirations. This is what you thought last January or February you wanted to do for the year. Well, we're getting there. So comp plan should be done in the next 2 or 3 months. You can't start the official map and zoning ordinance really until that's done, so we're still not started that. Ongoing with the sidewalk inventory.
I will jump in right there.
There you go.
So this is I think one of the purposes of an annual report is a reminder. So I will take this as a reminder to send the link out to the planning commission for the sidewalk inventory. Send that out tomorrow. It'll be a link that you'll need the link to get to it. There won't be a link on a web page or anything. So it'll just be a link, save it somewhere, and then you can get into the sidewalk inventory.
And then, of course, continual educational outreach. I think with the joint meetings, I think we did a lot of outreach to whoever showed up. Hopefully, now that we're not doing 2 meetings a month, we can work on actually getting some stuff done with education of residents on planning topics. And of course, Tony's offered you guys some free lunch to come get some education on yourselves. So I suggest you avail yourselves of his hospitality.
I'll send out even more.
The thing we do
need. Thank you.
The thing we would like some feedback on is item D, which is what you think should happen this year. Dave put together some thoughts as to what you might want to have happen. Feel free to agree, disagree, add, subtract, up to you.
And I think the second bullet under C was intended to be put under D above the start official map and zoning ordinance. I think I put it in the wrong spot. So, and the part of the rationale for putting that in there, there may be other implementation items that are recommended in the comprehensive plan that the BOC may ask the planning commission to work on. So that's why that part was kind of left open-ended. Because ultimately, once we go through that prioritization exercise with the BOC and township manager, we'll have a better direction on what's coming and what's prioritized and timelines of things. So those are things that may be coming back to the planning commission for tasks.
Continue educational outreach to the community. We also add another bullet point under that, continue education of our board as a whole. Absolutely. There's things always changing. New stuff coming down.
educational opportunities locally and elsewhere online. So it just makes us more proactive.
I'll definitely continue to pass along any educational opportunities I see. And I think you can always ask for the township to foot the bill. You may or may not get it, but you can always ask.
You can always ask. I can also, and I don't want to inundate everybody with the opportunities, but as a professional planner, there are often webinars with continuing education credits for me as a professional planner. I can certainly forward those to you guys, and if something comes up that you're interested, you can by all means register for those. Most of the time, they're free. There are some interesting topics that do come up. If the board's interested, I can certainly share those as I become aware of them.
Be fine with that.
I see that.
I'll be PC classes this year.
Should the LVPC is going to be holding all 4 classes this year. For some reason, they
I forget.
And don't you get a really nice certificate if you take all 4?
You do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hanging on my wall.
Citizens Award.
And you get your name on a website. APA website. APA website.
I don't know if my name would be good on that.
I didn't see it there.
Is it just the citizens?
No, it's before the certified.
Okay.
Before.
I don't have any comments. Yeah, completing the comp plan that we've been working hard on that, spending a lot of time and effort on.
If anyone has some thoughts, I'm sorry. If anyone has some thoughts after the meeting, feel free to email them in. But it sounds like you pretty much, with the one addition, are finding what's there acceptable.
I agree with that. I have 1 G in my last name. Page 1.
And this is why I do this.
But I still have 2.
I got that one. Okay, good.
But last night, Greg, I saw a memo.
So that's
Internal memo.
yeah,
that had
2 Ds.
2 M's.
2 Ds.
Well, I see 2 M's.
I saw 2 Ds in Adams.
That's not me. That's a different family entirely.
All right, anything else on the draft?
All right, so I'll make those changes for you back next month so you can push it along with BOC.
Mr. Wilson can present it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or actually, it has to be done by March.
March or February?
I think it's by March 1st.
In March.
Is it March 1st?
All right.
All right, so would you like to,
Tonight,
yeah, would you like to push it along tonight
with your edits.
with the edit?
Is that a motion?
I can't make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
I'll make a motion, okay with the evidence we discussed, move it to Board of Commissioners.
And then we're going back to the old style. Trevor Dombach.
Aye.
Tim Dugan.
Aye.
Andrew Flagg.
Aye.
Brian Height.
Aye.
Diane Kelly.
Aye.
And David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Agenda item number 8, transportation infrastructure update.
Thank you. All right, so buckle up, I got 2 pages. Very quickly. Along with
was discussed at LETS meeting. 22 widening, they're working through, but they're a long way away. There's no let date, so that's not happening anytime soon. The 309 betterment project has a let date of March 2024. They're going through property. They have a lot of properties to go through, so maybe bumped, but so far they're assuming March 2024 is the date. 309 Tillman Interchange pushed to April 2024. They're in permits and acquisition. Acquisition is wild card, so it could take longer. Lastly, Monchunk signal improvements, May 2024. Now that project originally was an adaptive system, now we're just doing upgrades. So they're working through that. There's 4 projects through PennDOT in South Carolina.
Thank you. And item number 9, courtesy of the floor.
Page 189. Oh, Chris, take your thunder on this one.
Sure. I actually didn't see that was in the agenda. We made a comment to the board last evening that staff has received the North Whitehall Township Comprehensive Plan, the draft plan, and that we wanted to make note to submit a comment during their public comment period of the future land use proposed near the border of North Whitehall and South Whitehall Township. There are several areas that are proposed as industrial in the future land use plan that are adjacent to our Jordan Valley proposed future land use. The comment that we wanted to make is just that we wanted to highlight the goals of the Jordan Valley land use category, preserve the rural and historic character of the Jordan Valley, and we acknowledge to the board that these 2 industrial areas are currently zoned industrial. North Whitehall is not proposing any future changes. I know we've discussed, I believe, during the comprehensive plan workshop meetings, during our land use discussion, the potential for conflicts of our neighboring communities. The staff's opinion of this is that when we do have opportunities to coordinate with our neighboring municipalities, we like to address those up front, and that specifically with these industrial uses, we would look at working with the township to identify areas where we can coordinate and hopefully minimize impacts when possible. The board did vote to allow staff to send a letter to North Whitehall, but we can have any discussions on that.
Thank you. Yeah, the industrial land use, that's North Whitehall Township, that's their purview. Unfortunately, I think it's great that we're communicating with them. It isn't exactly harmonious with our use, but I don't think there's much we can do, but I think it's great that we communicate with them, and maybe something does happen, but not optimistic about it.
The discussion at the BOC revolved around how this can be starting the conversation on better coordination in the future, open other opportunities potentially to coordinate more. So that's some additional language that will get baked into the transmission that goes out to them.
Is that North Whitehall is posted for comment in that community?
Correct.
Yes. So I'm not entirely sure that they posted on the website like we did. We received it as part of the MPC regulation as a neighboring municipality. I don't know that they went over to the extent we did for public input. So I haven't been on the website, so I don't know where it is.
All right, great. Then item number 10, adjournment. So move. Wait a second.
Do you really want a roll call
All in favor, say aye.
vote? Thank you all.